Right. Here we are. So the subject today is strategic calendar work blocking. And those of you who are attending here live, I've already introduced myself. For those of you who are new to my work, my name is Bill Hershey from Lifestream Business Services. I provide non-CPA accounting and business coaching to integrative health practitioners who want to grow their clinic. Um, it wasn't that long ago that I was in the early stages of my business. I'm only in year 4 at the time of this recording. And so originally I actually gave this presentation to one of the entrepreneurial communities that I've been part of for the last couple of years. It's called Marketing for Hippies. It's one of the communities that I recommend to my audience quite a bit. So those of you who are familiar with my work, you probably hear me referring to Tad Hargrave's work quite a bit. Tad Hargrave hosts a community called Marketing for Hippies, and it's got to be one of the most high impact, high value, low cost opportunities for folks, for small businesses, service entrepreneurs primarily, to learn kind of the core lessons of marketing 101. And not just marketing, but Tad teaches a lot of different entrepreneurial skills that are going to make it easier for us to be successful in carrying out our vision, what we're trying to achieve through our work. So for those of you who are on the earlier stage of your business, I just want to encourage you. It was like, it was 18 months ago that I joined that community, and I really was at a loss as to how to effectively communicate the value of my work and my message. So I'd encourage, and 18 months later, he asked me to show up and teach to his audience. He's got a reach of thousands and thousands of people who follow his work, and he's got hundreds of people in his community. So keep showing up, keep doing the work, and you may find yourself getting awesome opportunities like this. I just want to give a little hopeful note for you here. So, in simple terms, I help small businesses make more money without sacrificing their values. And I'm going to give you some tools here that, although time management and project management and capacity management, these aren't the core focuses of my work as a non-CPA accountant and business coach, but they are the skills that I'm going to teach you. It is a critical success factor for being effective in my business. So when we look at a problem like time scarcity, like, gosh, it's like I just don't have enough hours in the day to get everything done that I feel needs to get done. And, just to normalize, in the first year or two of business, there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done, and it's not going to all happen at once. And generally, because a lot of these things are new, things take a lot longer to figure out for the first time around than as compared to, maybe 3, 4, or 5 years into your business. You're going to have a level of proficiency in some of these areas potentially, or you might be able to afford paying team members to help you carry some of the weight that comes with running a business. So if we're not having enough time in the day to accomplish everything that we want to do, it's a complex problem. Strategic calendar work blocking is aimed to help us utilize the time that we have available at our disposal to the best possible, to make the best possible impacts in our business. So, time scarcity can be rooted in a revenue problem, which ties to a lot of things. It could be simply that the time we're spending in our business isn't actually tipping the needle. It's not actually generating enough revenue. So it may be tied to marketing. It may be tied to your pricing. It may be tied to your productivity. It may be tied to business management. And again, each of these categories, there's interrelationships of problems that weave between those categories. So today I'm going to give you a behind the scenes view into the structure, how I structure my time and my work. Some of this is self-taught. Some of this is are tactics and strategies that I've learned from various accounting mentors. And I'll just say that accountants are great with the structural sides of business. So there's a lot that we can learn from our colleagues in that realm. This is a quote from one of my accounting mentors, Jason Bloomer. Being intentional with your calendar work blocking helps you control your schedule rather than being at the mercy of emotions, tough days, team decisions, or poor planning. I'm going to zoom this in just so we can see it a little better, because I know it's probably showing up a little small on your screen. Okay, and I want to give you another couple quotes just to frame up the importance of using time well in our business. So according to Peter Drucker, one of the pioneers of business management consulting, time is the scarcest resource, and unless it's managed, nothing else can be managed. This is from Cal Newport. I'll be referring to his work a few times in today's presentation. The key to developing a deep work habit is to move beyond good intentions and add routines and rituals to your working life, designed to minimize the amount of your limited willpower necessary to transition into and maintain a state of unbroken concentration. I know it's a run-on sentence, and I know he can write a lot better than that, but that captures the essence of what we're talking about here. I'm going to be in the bottom of this sheet. There is a link to this book on Amazon. I highly, highly recommend checking this out because this can help you. It can help train our mind with a new framework of how we understand, how we approach our work, how we approach projects, especially projects that require deeper levels of concentration to be effective. And he's sharing some of his secrets that have allowed him to become a prolific writer and professor. Okay. A lot of what we teach in business is common sense. And, it's just an art of making common sense explicit. So by naming it, we're making it explicit. This is the time work formula that I'm sure you've heard of, but I ask you to take pause and not write this off like, oh, I already know this, right? Let's break it down. So work equals time times the rate of work. Sounds pretty simple, right? But when we look at this, we start to understand that it's work that we get paid for. Work is what drives revenue for our business, right? So another way of when we look at the other part of the equation, rate of work, that's productivity. And we can look at that in terms of speed. We can look at it in terms of efficiency. We could look at it in terms of potency. Yeah, the power that's instilled into the work, what the kind of impacts that we're able to get in perhaps a shorter period of time. If you're an integrative health practitioner, for instance, maybe it typically takes the typical doctor to see somebody over the course of 6 months to help with a certain condition. Maybe you use a modality or at such a level of proficiency in your modality that you can get those results within 2 or 3 months. That's potency. Yeah, you can, and there's value in that. If someone's paying the other doctor $6,000 for a 6-month program and you can do it in 2 or 3 months, does that mean you should charge less? Not necessarily. It's actually higher value. You're getting more done in a shorter period of time. You're actually saving them time and efforts as well. Okay, so when we're looking at there's aspects and elements to each side of this equation. This side of the work, there's softer elements of that, like value, right? So when we look at rate of work, the value, I'm gonna jump around, excuse me. The value of the work can be measured by quality of work and the subjective value of the measurable impacts for our clients. So let's go back to that analogy of someone who got, what's typically a 6 months treatment. They got a result in 2 or 3 months from your expertise and brilliance, right? Let's look at the subjective value for that person. Let's assume that they're a CEO of an organization and they're responsible for a lot of different people. And maybe they're making a lot of money. So if you've saved them a number of sick days, if you've saved them from having to go to twice as many appointments, that's major impacts, economic impacts even for the life of that CEO. There's impacts for their organization, for them to be able to operate and perform optimally. So value of work is sort of the subjective measure, and it's a subjective measure, and it really revolves around this locus of who are the impacts that this work is for, right? Who can afford the impacts that I'm providing for my clients? What value is created in the lives with these impacts, and what does that allow for? So these are all like niching questions, essentially. And the reason why niching is totally tangential to what we're talking about here today in strategic calendar work blocking. But because I gave this talk to Marketing for Hippies and for Taz Community, which people come to him to help them with their marketing and especially clarity around who they're serving and how and why that's valuable. I want to bridge that in, that doing that work is super crucial. And it's really kind of a base layer for some of this higher work that we're doing as we're understanding the value of work and figuring out how we can use the time in our business that we have at our disposal for the best possible impacts for our own selves and the people we serve. Okay, so that's my tangent. I didn't want to take it out. I thought that was valuable to include. But now we're going to bring it back to the focus of this part of the equation, time, and how we're using time through the rate of work, the type of work, the productivity. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to a three-part method. I use three tools for this three-part method. And, the reality is we all work differently. Our minds are built differently. We have the same anatomy, but we develop different styles, different habits. We have different ways of thinking. So I'm going to encourage you to see if you can see into the core principles of what I'm implementing in this method and see how it can work for you. Yeah, you may just be adapting a few things in your system that you have already. You may be adding a part or two to the system you have already, or you may just be like, hey, this looks like it's worth trying. Maybe just execute this note by note. So this is a quote from one of my other accounting mentors, Seth David. What keeps me sober might get you drunk. So bear that in mind, right? So this is what keeps me sober, right? It may end up having you feeling really dizzy. So yeah, whatever method you decide to adopt, any method will require refinement over time to troubleshoot. Yeah, you'll need to tighten it up. I would say give yourself, if you're going to adopt a method like this, at least give yourself a month. I would say more like 3 to 6 months to really see if you can carry it out. And you're going to be learning things. You're going to be trying new things, and whatever you choose after that, you're going to have deeper insights into what it is you actually need to be successful with structuring your time. Okay, so part one, the first tool we're going to be talking about here is the calendar app. And this is a digital tool, right? It could be Google Calendar, it could be Apple Calendar, it could be Outlook, or perhaps something else. But these are the three most global solutions that people use in this realm. I find a lot of small businesses will tend to use Google Calendar. I think it's a great ecosystem for small businesses, solopreneurs especially. And you'll need that if you're using a scheduling app like Acuity or Calendly. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing Acuity right. Maybe it's Acuity, whatever it is. You'll need to and want to sync that with your digital calendar. You'll probably also want to sync up your Zoom with it through the integrations. That's all common sense for those of you who've been in the game for a while, but it's worth mentioning. So through your calendar app, you're basically going to lay out a structure for how you plan to use your work hours from week to week. And you can block out swaths of time. And we're going to call these rhythms. In other words, we're saying every week at a given time, we're going to dedicate that time towards a certain type of work activity, right? And by creating rhythms for ourselves, we're creating grooves in our mind that reduce the amount of decisions we have to make in every single day of how we're going to use time. It reduces decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is a thing. If we have to spend, a half a minute or a minute figuring out what we're going to do next, it takes energy and it takes a little bit of time. It takes away from the momentum of jumping right into that next thing. Right. So what's cool about these digital apps like Google Calendar is you can create recurring blocks. And so, if I create, I'm going to zoom in just so you can see what it looks like on mine. This is a screenshot. I'm not going to show you my actual calendar. So this is actually from earlier in the month before I filled out my schedule for that week. I designed this workshop in January, so it was a pretty empty week at that point. And you'll see that I have my personal routine laid out. These are kind of the anchors. I have my morning routine. I start my workday 8:30, 9-ish. I don't always start right on the minute, but that's about how it works. I've blocked out my lunch break in the middle. I usually actually take about an hour for lunch from 1 to 2. And then I have my end of day at 6 p.m. I end my day. I go into some exercise or movement. I have my dinner. And if I still have some cleanup tasks to do at the end, I'll do some work at night. A lot of times I'm working a little bit at night, an hour or two, sometimes more, depending on what I got going on. And, depending on how fast you're trying to go in the development of your business, you may want or need to do that. Or you can just say, hey, I'm only going to pack in work into the given work hours that I've allocated in the day, and everything else can wait. That's fine too. So you'll see one thing I want to draw your attention to, because this can be a pretty major time suck, is communications, emails, calls, tending to text messages. For instance, I use Slack with my clients to manage communications because email can get unwieldy when you're managing large projects like bookkeeping and accounting or a business development engagement that goes over 6 months, which is what I do with my coaching clients. So I schedule times where I'm only doing that. And for me, that's in the beginning of the day. I do a short check when I start my day to see if anything's on fire that I need to tend to right away. I have one in the middle of the day, right before I take my lunch break. I'll take half an hour. I call it FUELS, which is an acronym: follow-ups, emails, lists, and Slack. So lists is like little, like 2-minute, 5-minute to-dos, like, okay, I got to call the bank. I got to order more checks. Okay, I got to call my insurance person to renegotiate that policy real quick, whatever it is, right? So I have that in the beginning, the middle, and at the end. So at 5:30, I wrap up my day with follow-ups again, checking in my email one last time. And I have PD in there. I plan my next day. If I'm really on my game with that, I do PD before I take my break at 6. In the last month or so, it's been a little bit, I'm just with year-end accounting and stuff like that, I'm busier than normal. And so I'm often planning my day a little bit later into the evening. Sometimes I'm a little behind the puck. I'm actually planning my day that morning, but I always find that I do better when I have my day planned out the day beforehand. I'm going to show you what that looks like as we get into the later tools. So one thing I also want to draw your attention to is, so 2 more things. One is I schedule light work and I schedule deep work. So you'll see blocks here for light work where I know it's like, hey, I need some time to really sink into something that requires more concentration. I base that on getting to know myself and my energy levels at different times of the day, right? So I know after lunch, I'm not going to be super productive because my energy's not in my brain, my energy's in my stomach, right? All the blood is flowing to the stomach to digest food. So it's like I have less resources available for my brain to do like really cognitively demanding work at that time. So I might do some lighter stuff, just checking in, going through a checklist, something that's more like bookkeeping is pretty easy. I'm skilled at it, so it doesn't take a lot of thought for me to go through and pick away at those types of things. Things like reviewing client work, if I'm reviewing a client exercise, that doesn't take a lot. Whereas deep work, this is where I'm really pulling on my cognitive reserves, going deep into a project. I need swaths of time. I have a 2.5-hour block here. I have a 3.5-hour block on Tuesday morning, right? I have a 3-hour block on Thursday afternoon. Here's where I cheat. I actually have project work at 2 o'clock on that one. And that's okay. It works out. I can take some time to work into that. So the other thing that I want to point out here is I have certain times for appointments on my schedule. Appointments, it's a total energy shift from going into, I do, because I'm a service provider, I do a lot of deeper work for clients, whether it's developing a business strategy for them, whether it's, one thing that I do is develop coaching programs for people where we actually lay out a transformation for somebody through metaphors. And doing that work can take 4 to 6 hours to really craft a roadmap for somebody's human development with developmental objectives and exercises, right? So that's the type of thing that we might put in a deep work slot. Whereas appointments, I have times in my day, like this 2 o'clock time is actually a great time for appointments. Like after lunch, I can talk to people really easily, but I'm not able to go into deep states of concentration. So I have spots where if someone's going to book an appointment with me, it's really in these times, right? And I make sure that I reserve time in my schedule in my week to do that deeper work. If I have a paying client who wants to book with me, then yeah, I'll make an exception. I'll get them in on maybe a Tuesday morning or a Thursday afternoon. But personally, I reserve Mondays and Fridays to do work on my business, deeper work in my business. So Mondays is more for client deliverable work, deeper work, project work. Fridays is more for work on my business or doing marketing activities like showing up and teaching a thing. Okay, or creating content. So yeah, so I invite you to lay this out for yourself. Maybe start with a sheet of paper and write it down before you put it into a Google thing. And what's nice about a Google thing, using Google Apps, is you can drag and drop these blocks around and structure it any way you like. Okay, so moving on. Part 2, weekly planner. This is the second tool. I'm just gonna show you real quick. This is what mine looks like. Um, I have a lot going on here. I color code it. I like having it that I can pick it up and it's within arm's reach at any given moment. I have a screenshot where you can have a closer look at this here. It's actually in the textbook. I didn't do this yet. For those of you who are attending live, I'm going to copy the link and put it in chat so you can pull this up and look at it while we're going through it. Bam. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, it's going to be in the YouTube description. So look out for that down there. You'll have access to it. Okay, so this is what it looks like. You'll see that I color code the types of appointments. Everything that's like in highlight, that's like an appointment kind of thing or a class. So pink is my top priority things. It's revenue generating activities, meaning clients. It might be working with my team, which I consider to be a revenue generating activity because my team is helping me deliver services. And you'll see I redacted a bunch of stuff just so we don't have names on there. There's one name here that's somebody that's not a client, that's somebody who I actually received mentoring from. Okay, so yellow is classes. Okay, so yellow, that's something I may or may, depending on the type of class it is, I may or may not make it. I prioritize revenue generating work generally, unless it's something that I paid a lot of money for, then I'm definitely going to show up, right? So green, for me, color code green is I'm going to show up and teach a thing. I'm going to have people showing up. I'm going to have an audience. It's more than just like a one-on-one kind of thing. So I have those in a different color so they really stand out because I'm going to need a little more preparation for those things. Okay, I want you to see on the side here that I like this planner because I can identify the top goals for the week, the top priorities, right? I would recommend choosing 3 to 5, right? So if I don't get anything else done this week, I want to make sure at least get the top 1 or 2 of those priorities nailed, right? If I can do all 3 or 5 of them, wonderful, right? And then I have a to-do list. These are smaller projects, smaller tasks that need to get done. So bonus points if you can assign time estimates, and this is really going to help you amp up your game in terms of time management. If you can begin estimating the time it's going to take to accomplish and complete a project, that will really help as you're planning out your capacity, as you're planning out, okay, I'm going to do pricing updates for my clients, right? I'm estimating, I've done that before, so I can estimate that's going to be about a 2-hour project for me to go back and look at my time histories for different clients, right? And from there, you can say, okay, that's a 2-hour block. You can look and see where you're going to slot that in the week or have at least a rough idea, right? So if you can go through and assign time estimates, you get bonus points. And then even better, if you can go ahead and slot in. I don't do this because my week tends to be a little bit fluid. I like to keep it fairly fluid, but I might have a general idea of when I'm going to accomplish something. So for instance, the pricing updates, I put Tuesday next to that. I'm going to aim for doing that on Tuesday. If I don't get it Tuesday, then I might get it Thursday afternoon in my project time, or maybe Friday, right? So whatever you don't accomplish in a given week, you can then carry it forward to the next week and write it on the list for the next week. So, and I end up doing that a fair amount. The thing is, the more that you do time estimates, the more that you're using this process, the better you're going to get. You're going to get more accurate when you're gauging the time estimates for work on some things, at least things that you've done before. Probably not. Generally, what's going to happen, at least what's happened for me, is I underestimate the amount of time that project will take. And that ends up being the reason why I end up kicking tasks forward quite a bit. It's kind of like kicking the can, kicking it forward to future days or future weeks. Okay, so I'm going to go to the third tool. The third tool is the daily planner. Okay, the daily planner can be super simple. It can be a very simple notebook, an 88-cent spiral brown notebook that you might get from Staples, something like that. Okay, that's the low budget, low 5 version. But it's effective. It's all you need. So you'll see here what I do is I take on the left spine, the left margin of the planner, just write down the hours of the day. And I start my day around 9. So I have 9 there. If I do an 8:30 thing, it'll just be right above 9. You'll see every line ends up being a half-hour block on the schedule. Got it so far? Okay, so here's where I take my weekly planner. I know I have appointments at certain times. I know I have certain priorities that I'm trying to accomplish in the week and smaller tasks. I'm going to look at that and I'm going to bring over what priorities do I want to accomplish in this day that I'm planning. Tuesday, this is a Tuesday in November, right before Thanksgiving. So I'm going to work on this particular day. I was working on my strategy formation, which is a 3-hour project. So I allotted 9 to 12 p.m. Right? I was forming my strategy for the coming year. Okay, I had my fuels. Remember the fuels, that's follow-ups, emails, lists. And for me, my clients are in Slack. So the S is Slack. For you, if you have another app that you're using for maintaining, maybe it's text, maybe it's Fuel T for you. I don't use text to communicate with clients, but you'll see that I put those, basically bring over the schedule from the weekly planner to the daily planner and bring over small tasks. Whatever I don't get done in a given day, it's going to happen. Don't kick yourself too much for it. If I don't get something during the day, at the end of the day, I circle it in red and I either accomplish it that evening if I can, or I carry it over to the next day. I put it on the next day's list, approximately about what time I want to accomplish that. So it's like, okay, I'm going to have a pocket from 4 to 5:30 where I can do some of these smaller tasks after my training in the afternoon. Okay. And either that, if you're not going to do it the next day, if your next day is looking already pretty full, you just put it on your day planner, or excuse me, your weekly planner where you think you're going to get it. If you're not going to get it this week, carry it over to the next week, right? Okay, so this is the second planner. This is a higher budget tool. I'm willing to buy it because I like it and it just makes me excited to do the work planning. And I feel it does just help me embrace this method. It's called the Time Block Planner, and this is actually by Cal Newport. This is it. So the image here on the screen is showing the insides of that, and the link for that is at the bottom of the sheet. Excuse me. This is the weekly appointment book. There's a link for that in the sheet too. You want to get for the whatever year we're in when you watch this video. And here's the Time Block Planner by Cal Newport. Right, so it's actually not that cheap. It's like $20, but it'll last. I think it's maybe how many is this? It's like 3 months worth or 5 months worth. I don't remember of day planning. Okay, so what you do on here, you always put the day and the date, day of the week, date on there, and not a whole lot different. It's structured a little differently. What you can do is, if you're getting fancy with this, is you actually put the slots, plan where you're going to put the tasks into the slots. And if you get to that slot and you're not able to get to that activity, reslot it for later in the day. Right. And I'm not to that level where I'm doing it to that level, but that's what Cal Newport recommends. Again, what keeps me sober might get you drunk. So I found my own method. It works for me. It looks sloppy, but it makes sense to me. Okay, so anything else I want to say on this? I just got to say, when I do this the night before that I come into a day and I just show up at my desk, it's like, whew, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I've had my game plan. It makes it so much easier. I'm less likely to get lost in my emails for a long period of time, which can happen, like reading newsletters and just like kind of, it's easy for me to fritter away time in my inbox. I like to communicate, right? And so that can be an Achilles heel for me. I can spend up, I can talk all day, right? But this helps me stay on task and know, okay, I budgeted my time for this specific purpose. I need to keep myself accountable to get these things done because I don't want to be up till 12 o'clock at night trying to do these things. Okay, so just a quick note. Uh, there are digital tools out there that will do what the daily planner and the weekly planner are doing. Some people use ClickUp, some people use Asana or Asana. Notion can be structured to do this. There's a lot of tools. I used Things for a little while as well. And you know what's happened is I always come back to pen and paper. I still do use Notion for some things. I may actually pick up ClickUp for certain things as well in the future, like recurring tasks. But it's for me, I appreciate the act of handwriting as a somatic practice. It helps me think. It helps me remember things. It helps me fortify my intentions with my work. And again, I just appreciate being able to see and touch my schedule within arm's reach without having to flip through windows on a computer screen to orient myself to time and work of what I need to be doing at any given moment. So, key takeaway is we need to use time well to get ourselves paid well, right? So I'm going to go through one last equation here. Labor cost equals hours worked times hourly rate. And this is just very simple, super common sense. But I want to talk about this because I think this will help us understand, again, another dimension of how we're using time in our business to generate the revenue we need to support ourselves. I'm not a big fan of charging an hourly rate. I do it in some cases, right? But I don't think this is a consistent reflection of value delivered, especially if you're doing high value work for people who have, uh, you know, who have money and who are making impacts in the lives of people that they're serving, right? So in the world of my business, value is evaluated subjectively by the impacts of our work and the impacts it has on their client, excuse me. I'm just going to read this word for word so I can make sense. Value is evaluated subjectively by the impacts our work has on our clients and in their lives. So depending on your client, if you're working with an organization, if you're working with a leader, not that those are the only clients to be working with, but if you are working with those folks, value can fluctuate proportionately with the economic capacity and the economic impacts our work has for our clients. So hourly rates just don't really account for that. There may be a decent starting point as a metric for pricing our service offerings, but I wouldn't necessarily lock yourself into that, especially if you're looking to become a very highly skilled expert in your field. Okay, so it's worth considering the following questions. How much money do I need to spend? How much money do I need per month to survive? How much do I need to be comfortable? How much do I need to thrive? These are ways that we can angle into how we can determine an appropriate pricing for our services. For those of you, I think those who are here with me live today, I think you have attended my pricing workshop, and pricing workshop is actually a great place to get in and get at least a baseline metric for how we price our services. Okay, so pricing workshop is the link is here. You'll see the URL here in the video. I basically offer this several times throughout the year. So at the time of this recording, you may be able to see if there is an upcoming workshop that you can check out, and that can help you dive into that side of the equation. Again, here's some links and of resources that I've mentioned in today's call. So the next one is not January 24th. The next one, I actually have one coming up next week, February 28th, 2025. If anybody wants to come in, even if you've attended the workshop, I think this is going to be a valuable opportunity. Be able to come again is to go into your reverse engineer pricing template and actually update it and be able to ask questions to me live. And I can guide you on how you might be able to have a better understanding on how to price your services or potentially your service packages. All right. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Thanks for hanging with me. I'm going to say goodbye to those of you who are joining virtually. I hope you're able to follow my work, hit subscribe, hit like if you've enjoyed this, and have a good one.